Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Paul did a fantastic intro, so we're going to try something new here. Surprise you a little bit halfway through, and hopefully we pull this off. So no further ado, next slide, please. Next slide. A little bit about Tsunami. So you may or may not have heard of us. We've been in existence for a number of years, but have been designing a lot of applications for the client list you see below there for a lot of areas in sales, marketing, training simulators, and have moved in the last few years into enterprise software, secure, scalable, SaaS-based collaboration solutions for VR and into AR. And our ability to publish applications or take content, ingest it, and be able to publish that out into both a virtual space as well as in augmented reality. And we'll talk through a couple areas in which we're doing that and then finish off with a demonstration of those in action. Next slide, please. And next slide. Okay, so we're in the midst of the next major technology revolution. So in the physical context, we increased our physical ability in the industrial revolution. As we entered into the digital revolution, we increased our information processing. We're in the midst of converging both of those. Both the physical and digital worlds are coming together, and with that is allowing us to truly increase productivity, workplace safety, and our capacity for learning. And we'll talk about the brain's ability to absorb a lot more information in an immersive environment in a minute. Next slide. So, if you've ever wondered why you fall asleep when you're reading, one little note here is your brain is only processing 1 kilobit per second, your optic nerve is. And so it's bored, your brain is bored. We have a great opportunity to expand beyond what we can do in a 2D plane. If you look at this, the optic nerve has the bandwidth capability of 8 megabits per second. So think about the opportunity there from working in a 2D plane to where we can move into a full immersive environment and really excite the brain. And I think that's why as we look and test and demonstrate augmented and virtual reality solutions, the excitement and energy is not just because it's cool, it's because we're actually absorbing more, we're engaged, and we're focused on the content at hand. The other big factor we're seeing is obviously the increase in GPU power and the cost curves dramatically declining, and that convergence is allowing us to start to take advantage and be able to use this to provide more information to our brain and process that information. Next slide, please. So this is pretty intuitive, but our ability to retain and process information is significantly greater. I included a quote from a Bernstein research paper. They quoted 5 times more effective when we actually practice what we're doing. And so we're moving beyond the area of the ability to do just learning by reading and by seeing. We now have the ability through virtual and augmented reality solutions and visualizing of data, enterprise data, to actually practice and do this. And do this in a way that we can do things that we never were able to do before when you think about hazardous conditions and be able to experience what happens and goes wrong when you have do the procedure the wrong way. We're in the midst of doing a training application for a large gas product company. And one of the things that they were adamant about in the design of the solution was, can you allow our drivers, when they're out there in the distributing gas, understand what goes wrong if they do the wrong valves or the wrong set of procedures in a way, and make it a very intense experience when it's done wrong. That's the first that we've been able to do as an industry to start to be able to provide those kind of workplace solutions. Another one being with a large telecom carrier, rooftop safety is a big issue for them. How can they train on their rooftop procedures and be able to do that in a manner that obviously heretofore required someone to actually go up there and physically walk someone through that test or that procedure. Next slide, please. So, did anyone see the Gordon Hayward accident last night? Pretty brutal. He's going through surgery. For those who didn't see it, he's the first game with the Boston Celtics, went up, came down on his ankle, and it was one of those Joe Theismann-esque moments where it went completely the wrong way. And he's having surgery today. So one of the things that I wanted to bring here and in real time introduce this is we're actually working with one of the NBA teams now. Is an issue that they had is going, can you help us with players being able to understand and visualize what is going on with their bodies, understand what the injury was, and then be able to provide input to them as to what's the recommended procedure. They said the big issue we have is as they look at MRIs and other data, there's lots of gray, white. It's very hard to distinguish what's going on. They sort of check out. But the ability to be able to go in and actually understand, be immersed in that and see what's going on, it would be a game changer for them. So I immediately thought of that last night watching that, saying this is something that is very relevant and something that is going to be providing a lot more information to players of all sorts, as well as obviously in workplace incidents as well. So next slide. So what we've designed and started to build is virtual rooms for each player for this particular team, and the goal being that they would have an individual room that would be a particular player's room that would have all of their medical information, player stats that they could go in, both trainers, coaches, and otherwise, to be able to actually visualize and take the particular athlete through the injury that they have, be able to let them put their head in, and understand in depth. I only had knee pictures, wasn't able to put any ankles in, so a little different than what happened to Gordon. But they said that's a game changer for them to actually be able to show them what's going on and be able to do that and provide information on the procedure that's being recommended, and not only do that with their doctor on site, but obviously getting information and consults from leading experts around the US and around the globe, can join in a virtual space and be able to consult and provide a lot more information. And so not only do you see the 3D objects there, but we can also visualize the information through whiteboards, PDFs, videos, web pages, you name it. So a variety of different areas into which you can start to visualize this information and provide that in a unique way that we've never been able to do before. Next slide, please. The other big piece that we're seeing as we look at visualizing information is the ability to start to recognize patterns and moving beyond a 2D plane. And as you see, the ability to now to look at and more quickly recognize and more accurately recognize in a three-dimensional view what is going on, and be able to draw conclusions on a much faster basis. And that is one of the other areas that we're seeing significant advancements in being able to take data, take it into an immersive environment, be it AR or VR, and be able to show that information to analysts or people in the field. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next piece that we wanted to do here, this may be a first, I think, for EWTS, but this entire presentation was done inside a virtual workspace here. I'm not presenting this on PowerPoint, so I'd like Dan to wave. Oh, there's Dan. Dan is in the virtual world that you just saw there, and he's going to start to show some of the capabilities of being able to visualize this information. For those of you who are wondering, Dan is in the back of the room there, and we're actually broadcasting up through a virtual workspace, and he's going to walk through and show a number of different capabilities today. All right, let's roll into the room. One of the things we wanted to show here is a number of different ways that you can start to look at and visualize information. So we're going to open up a workspace that's specific to a little area that we designed on looking at wind flow tunnel data on a motorcycle and being able to determine what's going on with the demo gods are having fun. There we go. So why is doing that? That's the room that you join into, and you can create any number, infinite number of rooms to start to visualize your information. As we looked at the training solutions that we're doing right now, each of the objects are being rendered into the virtual workspace there. Once they're in there, then they can be manipulated and utilized. Oh boy. My friend from Skanska took all the, gave me Mr. Murphy here on the demo. Let's try this one more time. All right, here we go. All right, so you can see here the ability to bring in live streaming video that's going on in terms of the wind stream data. We've got information being shown, analytics and information, as well as actually live streaming wind flow data coming off of the motorcycle, where you can see the effects across the motorcycle and looking at different ways to make it more aero efficient. Dan's moving around. You can start to see within the workspace there. He can take very close-up views, look at different angles, and see the data in a whole different dimension. Next, we're going to go over and take a look at some of the analytics. So you can think about the ability here as we're populating information coming off of, think of IoT data. In this case, we're providing lots of sensor information off of the wind tunnel testing and providing that in real time. So not only is the engineer or product design team looking at that information coming off of the wind tunnel, but actually seeing that being populated across different boards so that they have all the information in one place. So no longer do you have to be jumping between screens or applications. You can start to understand what's going on as you just simply turn around in a 360-degree information environment. In this case, we are simulating, the existence of artificial intelligence and starting to analyze that and providing information on changing the cowling to reduce the wind drag. So once again, all of this in one particular area that design teams can look at and focus on and be able to do that together, both do that in the room in one space, but also be able to do that on a desktop or another mobile device. So this gives you a little bit different view and different data sources there, and you've got that capability where you're sitting in there to have all this information at once in front of you and be able to utilize that. And we're starting to see a lot of interest and deployments as we look at design and engineering teams. In particular, that's being looked at heavily because we can import all different types of CAD files directly into the room and be able to do that without having to manipulate the data or the object. The other areas that we're seeing is training. We talked about that in terms of workplace safety and then also procedures and tasks. The ability to have a trainer remotely in the room and being able to walk through all of the information, whether it be web pages or actual animation and the procedures, or have the trainee join the room with the trainer remotely and be able to work with them, or broadcast that information to literally hundreds on desktops or mobile devices, is another capability that we're seeing from a training perspective. And then I also touched on the opportunity for us to be able to generate and do things as it relates to workplace safety, being another big area that we're seeing this kind of capability resonating with clients and looking at opportunities for us to be able to deploy and improve productivity and workplace safety. So with that, that concludes the demo area. I have plenty of time to take any questions that might be out there relative to visualizing your enterprise data.
Let me, so you're, when we're looking at this data, basically you're pulling it from any of the sources that we could have seen earlier in the day, whether it's these neck-down wearables, whether it's the headsets, those types of things, and really creating that collaborative environment so
exactly.
that everybody can be in the same place at the same time. Is that
That's
a pretty
exactly
good
right.
description?
Yep.
So when you look at that, what are the things for an industrial setting where people really start to gravitate toward very quickly? The one with the health records made perfect sense to me for an athlete.
Right.
If you look at some of the things that go on in industry, what are you seeing there?
So one of the biggest areas we've seen in terms of training is the ability to start to bring in particular procedures and being able to walk through those and be able to reduce the training cycle. So the example I gave on the gas product company, it's a 42-step procedure. It takes about 12 minutes to go through, but the issue they're finding is with driver turnover, it takes around 6 to 8 weeks to get a driver proficient in doing the distribution process. How do they shrink that down so they don't have to have someone do ride-alongs for 6 or 8 weeks to make sure that they understand the process? Can we take them into a virtual environment, speed that up so that they're doing it multiple times, testing them out, and then also providing the ability if they have forgotten a step, oh, let me pull up on my mobile device, and let me watch an animation of it again. It's very basic. It's not AR.
It's kind of a refresher.
Exactly.
But so we got some stuff going with some pharma companies, and they stand shoulder to shoulder for 6 months. You're describing somebody in a gas truck. I mean, there's somebody that's saying it takes us that long. We're not going to slow this training down because when it goes badly, it goes incredibly badly.
Exactly.
What you're saying is I'm going to put you almost like a pilot in a flight simulator, make all your mistakes, learn from them, ingest them, and then put you out there with a little coaching. Is that
That's right.
kind of the thing?
That's exactly it. Yep, we think we can reduce it somewhere between 30 and 40% of the current time cycle. So that's what we're testing now.
That's a lot. Do we have other questions from the audience? Anybody doing these types of things where you're pulling kind of collaboration rooms together or is it more just still about getting the first? So let me ask it this way. Who's actually got something in play where you're collaborating, pulling all this data together? So it's pretty quiet, right? I think we got one or two. Can you give just one or two pointers on where people really should start and kind of how to move their organization, maybe how to build a case? Is that something you could share?
Absolutely. So two areas. I think that the areas that we're seeing immediately where clients, where we would state to begin would be in the areas of, I should say maybe three. Product design and engineering, where they can start to have global design teams be able to collaborate for the first time in a virtual space, both fully immersed or on a desktop, and be able to have that information in the room where it can be marked up and looked at 24/7 by design teams. So that information's there, and that can start to prove out and look at, what are those design cycles being reduced, because now all that information is being collaborated on versus heretofore they'd have to ship it around or have one person at a time in an immersive environment doing that markup. The other area we're seeing, obviously, is on the training. We're starting to benchmark the before and after. We have a lot of clients that have obviously baselined how long it takes to get proficient in a particular procedure or job task, and the ability then to say, all right, let's bring them into a immersive environment and start to look at how fast we can do that. The other piece that we haven't gotten enough data yet is we believe that the insurance liability factor is significant in workplace safety. So if we can start to train on and provide intense experiences, as I was describing earlier, we think we can start to drive down the incidence of workplace safety because they've actually experienced what goes wrong versus being told. They can actually now physically go through it and understand it in a new way. And then the last area is around sales and marketing, and the opportunity now for some clients that are starting to do NCR being one where ATMs, they would design a virtual bank inside there, have a client walk through and look at ATM placement, as well as discuss the clients any of the new ATM models, CAD accurate models in there that they can show all the parts and pieces inside of it for a new client, saying this is why this new model of ATM is better than the prior one. And they can do that remotely versus obviously shipping a massive ATM out or having them come visit.
Great. So any last questions before we wrap up? So listen, thanks, Rich.
Thank you very much.
Great presentation, Some pretty amazing